second hour, we have a very special guest joining us. He is the creator and producer of the films Esoteric Agenda, Kymatica, and now the new Ungrip. And for those of you who I know have been fans of the GIC and have been a part of our organization, I'm sure you've watched the movies because we post them like crazy. But anyway, so let's welcome to the show Ben Stewart. Hello, Ben. How are you today?
I'm doing great today. I'm glad to be on here.
Well, we're really happy to have you on. The first thing I've got to ask you is, how did you find the family that you did the Ungrip movie on?
Well, the very first talk I ever gave was actually right after Esoteric Agenda had come out. I was asked to come up to Toronto to do a talk, and it just so happened that at that talk it was myself, a girl named Taz Janine, who studies anthroposophy, the work of Rudolf Steiner and Wilhelm Reich, and then we also added in Rob, who at that point, obviously some of this information was in Esoteric Agenda, but Rob was living it. So it was all of our first talk, and we just happened to, between Rob and I, really hit it off, and I ended up just wanting to see the Earthship that he lived in. So I traveled out there. Obviously I was there visiting him as a friend too. So I brought my camera along and I started filming some things, and while I was out there we just decided let's do a few interviews. So you'll notice that the winter footage is actually from the very first time I went up there, and all the rest of the footage is from like the second and third time that I had gone up there. So I had met him basically because his wife was studying Heilkunst, which is it's anthroposophy mixed with the study of orgone with Wilhelm Reich, and apparently that's a really new, not new in a sense of like a practice, but it's new thinking. There's a lot of very, very incredibly intuitive, incredibly conscious people within Heilkunst. And so anything that's new and cutting edge and, any type of information that's coming to the forefront, usually it's passed through those types of cultures first. And so that's how Rob found out about it, was through his wife, and he just decided to live it, basically. He changed his whole life according to it and allowed it to change his life. And I thought that was, such a beautiful, loud statement, and that's why I wanted to make a film on it, because instead of me doing the same thing as Esoteric Agenda and Kymatica, where I'm basically just giving my views, my points, I decided it would be beautiful to show that people are living it. People are actually doing this. So I didn't really have to give too much of my philosophy, just show somebody who chose to have their life change because they realized that what they were living in was not freedom. Even though he had a cushy job, he had his wife, he had his kids, he had his mortgage, same thing that most everybody else in North America and civilized parts of the world live with. And he just decided, he was like, this isn't freedom to me. I don't feel free. So he took the necessary steps for him to find freedom. And that's one thing I point out in the film, is the fact that his journey and his path is not necessarily the thing that everybody should be doing. It was right for him. The essence of the film is to show that anybody at any given time, regardless of how comfy we are in our current, our current place in life, we can choose to change at any given time. And that's what he did. So that's really the message that rings really true with that film.
Yeah, that's what I got out of it also. It's very empowering to know that, to see somebody literally apply these philosophies that many of us talk about and we go round and round and round about, and to see it literally coming on the ground and living it is very inspiring and empowering. I have to go back to the beginning, back to Esoteric Agenda, because I feel, well, first of all, that's of course how I found out about you, was Esoteric Agenda. And when it first came out, it was like, well, maybe in my circles it was a little controversial. For me, it rang true, the whole thing. Mm-hmm. And I'm sure you've gotten, where people try to debunk this and debunk that, and God knows we get them all the time as well. But what was your I guess, inspiration to want to start creating that movie Esoteric Agenda? Were you kind of just like tired of seeing everybody believing falsehoods, or a little bit of education in there, or what inspired you to make the Esoteric Agenda, get you started on this path, I guess is my question.
Well, what inspired me, the core of all my inspiration comes from me acting out my art in my life, in a sense. So creating that film was a reflection. In a sense, it's a mirror of what I was going through, the transitions and the changes that I was going through in my life at that time. So, yes, obviously it was controversial, and there was a lot of attempts to debunk it. And the only reason why I say attempts is because there's really nothing in the film from my intention of the film that can be debunked, because all the information wasn't really the point of the film. I wanted to create something that was controversial. I was welcoming the debunkers. I was welcoming those who disagree with all the information. The purpose really behind it, my inspiration, was I love rattling the cages. I love shaking people's minds up in any way, shape, or form. So I believe that it did exactly what it was supposed to do. It was merely a reflection of the transition I was going through at that time, and that led, obviously, to Kymatica. And, I believe that really the biggest inspiration in my life has been my brother. And my brother was the one who handed me the Tao Te Ching at the age of 11 or 12, and that stuck with me, and that's what brings me into the occult and psychological truths within the films, is the fact that I had noticed in my life that regardless of the way we see the world, whether we see the world as broken and we need to fix it, or whether we see the world as perfectly fine and all we need to do is leave it alone, it doesn't matter the way that you really do look at the world. What matters is the energy you choose to look at it from, the lens that you choose to see the world through. And I wanted to make it very apparent that it's not about us gathering together to change things outside of us. It's about us gathering together in communities or doing it alone, but to recognize that all these things on the outside that we wish we could change are nothing more than a mirror reflecting some sort of an analogy of what's going on within us. And if we can crack that riddle, if we can look at it from the lens of, okay, this isn't a problem that needs to be fixed, but this is a story within me that I can expound upon, I can finish maybe. And that's really the essence of the films. That's what's inspired me, is constantly keeping people thinking new. I don't care what people think. That's not my choice to decide what they think. I just want people I would like to see people challenge themselves, challenge their own mind, challenge their heart, challenge their preconceived notions, their beliefs, their dogmas. That's where I believe true change comes from.
I couldn't agree with you more. That's one of my mottos this past month has been, I'm not here to tell you what to think. I'm just here to share with you what I've seen. And it's because as a radio person and someone who runs a network or whatever, everyone's like, oh, well, what are you trying to make us think this? I'm not trying to make you think anything. This is the information. Take it or leave it, and please just, take what works for you. Kind of like what you said at the beginning with Ungrip, and it works for Rob. One of the things that I really find fascinating about you as a person is you're so informed, you're so educated. You seem to be you are absolutely eloquent and delivering your communication. Where do you attribute that to?
Confidence. That's about the only thing that I can say is confidence balanced by ethics. And the reason why I say that is because I am not here to say that anything that I say is true. And in many ways, I'll even point out the fact that I purposely contradict myself. I do this in radio interviews. I do it in my films. I purposely contradict myself with words, but not with energy. And it's very simple. with public speaking and things like that, I've been in a band for years and years and years, so I know how it is being in front of people and, doing radio interviews. And, there are some brilliant, brilliant, brilliant people that just, they don't seem to be the public speakers because of one thing or another. But the one thing I can say is that I by no means am more of an authority or more well-spoken than some of these people out there. I just had the confidence to say something. And, a very good friend of mine, actually his name's Ben too, his name's Ben Ketchum, and I've been a friend of his for quite some time, and he has very, very differing ideals than I do, yet he's one of my best friends. He is up in New York for the Occupy movement. He's also down here in Harrisburg for the Occupy movement, and he was thinking about traveling out to Salt Lake City with me. And, to be very clear, myself and he going around to these Occupy movements don't really show support for Occupy in a sense. It's more support for people who are asking for change and are willing to be a conduit for change, because I don't really necessarily support anything. Mm-hmm. And what I do support is people. I don't support ideals or even agendas or anything like that, because those always change, and those always are influenced by the now, the here and now. And the here and now is where real change exists anyway. And so what I've noticed is that, with my friend Ben, he and I were actually having this conversation a few days ago that really, truly, what we see going on right now as far as change, whether it be within the Occupy movements or anything for that matter, is the fact that people are just tapping into what's going on right here and right now. There's really no identity, no label to it. And because my friend Ben and I have such differing ideals, it does always keep me in check to remembering that I'm not here to prove myself right. I'm not here to prove any ideology that I had correct. I'm not here to actually become a little bit more comfortable with my viewpoints. I'm actually here to challenge them, and that's why I surround myself with people who continually challenge me in a loving way, in a way that is more supportive of change rather than out of fear, which always turns into that aggression, which always turns these movements into something that eventually fizzles out. Because when there's too much aggression and too much fear wrapped up in a revolution or a movement, that is when there's a lot of fear coming from the opposing side, such as the authorities, the cops, the government. And that is when you'll start to see that there's a lot of friction. The one thing that I definitely dig about what I'm seeing right now is people are challenging the ideas and beliefs, but they're doing it in a way that is not abrasive. And that's pretty much the essence of all the films that I've done, every radio interview, is the fact that I'm not here to make a point, really. I'm here to show that you can change at any point in time. So if you pay attention to yourself, if you're conscious and aware of how you're dealing with your world, your environment, your immediate atmosphere, if there's something wrong, if you feel that something's just not right, then that's something we should discover within ourselves. And I am merely here to show support for those who are looking for change. So that's why, in my films, what I try to show is that we are here allowing change. We're not here creating change. We're here allowing it, because change is something that is in the air. It's in the space between people. It's in the culture that you tap into. Just like you'll hear jazz musicians say, I've never written a song in my life. What I do is I tap into the here and now. The here and now writes the song. I just become an instrument for that. It's the same thing with any type of change. These people that are standing out on the Capitol steps of Harrisburg, New York, Austin, Salt Lake City, San Diego, Los Angeles, Toronto, Calgary, down in South America, Australia, out in Europe, these are people that are choosing to become instruments for change. And they're not trying to put labels or faces or identities on it, and that's what I think is the most important part about it, is they are just becoming an instrument for change, to allow change to happen the way that change knows how to happen.
Brilliant, brilliant, absolutely, and I couldn't agree with you more. It seems that one of the wonderful things that I've been observing about the movement is exactly that it's apolitical. There is no parties involved, and one of the things that I feel my role is for my local Occupy is to remind everybody that this is a global occupation, that this is a force for change globally, as well as, of course, dealing with local issues. That it is for the reason being, and I say that for the reason being that it has always been my hope and my calling to see the world, for lack of a better term, awaken to its own ability to change and to evolve as an individual, but as a mass movement, for lack of a better term. In your opinion, what was the biggest message? And I'm going to talk about Kymatica now for just a second. What was your main intention and message for Kymatica? Because for me personally, I personally watched that movie probably like 10 times, and I get something out of it every single time. So I was wondering what you, as the producer, would say is the main message in it.
Well,
or is there one?
Well, and it's good that you asked that question, because I've had this question before, and the answer really to anybody that asks me what my films are about, typically I just say watch it. And when people have seen it and they still ask me what it's about, what I typically ask is, what did it mean to you? And the reason I use that as an answer is because really that's, in a sense, that's the purpose of why poetry is so vague and so concise, yet so profound, because you can allow yourself into it. You can add your own quirks, your ego into that poem, into that parable, and work out the answer within you, which means the answer is going to come about in many different ways. There's I'm failing to even think of an example that I can give, or a parable or a riddle that I can give, but there really is no answer to what the film is about. You can say that, yes, it's talking about this, it's talking about that, it's about self-responsibility, it has all those kernels of truth in it. However, the reason why I don't really get too explanatory on what the film is about is because as soon as I do, then people are going to see the film that way. They're going to see the film the way that I see it through my eyes, and I want them to see it through their own eyes, because when you enter yourself into a film like this, and I try to, obviously opinions pop out here and there, but I try to keep it as neutral as possible. And when there's something neutral, but it begs a certain persuasion, to the one side or to the other side, and you can't really find the balance of the film, that's what I like. That's why I like contradictory terms in words but not in energy, because I believe that there are thousands of different philosophies out there, and they all have the same essential riddle inherent within them. However, each and every one of them is a different pathway. It's like I'm here in Harrisburg. There are probably 100,000 different ways that I can get from here to Los Angeles, different roads that I can take, different routes, different back roads, main roads, even walking straight through the desert. But the one thing that I consistently say about it is there is no one way to get there, and if your intention is getting there, then you can form your own path. You can forge your own path, and that's kind of what it is with the movie Kymatica. Everybody knows what it is within that we're looking for, whether it be freedom, whether you want to put that title onto it, whether it be love, unconditional love, change. It doesn't matter what it is. That's not for me to decide. That's for the audience to decide. And there may be hundreds of different ways to get there, maybe an infinite amount of ways. And it's not for me to give a roadmap saying this is the way to get there, because then that's when people look at it very, I don't want to say in a slanted way, but in a very specific way, and they forget the fact that it's not really about just getting there. It's about learning how to follow your own path to get there. If people were to take Rob from the film Ungrip, if they were to take his path and just copy it, maybe they'll get maybe they'll eventually get to the same point that he has gotten, where the cops aren't bothering him anymore, the tax assessors aren't bothering him, the city and the state and everything else, they're not bothering him anymore. He can, go up in front of any judge. Maybe anybody can get to that point, but is that specifically what is going to help everybody? And obviously the answer is no, because everybody has their own path. And so with the film Kymatica, long story short, the film Kymatica is merely a canvas for people to paint their own emotions and their own psyche upon, and then they can reflect from the film what it is inside them that they would like to change, because that's where all change starts, is within. So I don't have the answers. I haven't met all 7 billion people on this planet, so it would be impossible and very pompous for me to believe that I can give a specific roadmap or an answer for people to live by. The most I can do is show this is how people have done it. Don't do it the way they did. Find the essence of change, the thing that never changes, that ancient truth about all change. Find that within you and then exploit that, expound upon it. Allow for it to become you. In a sense, that's what Gandhi said. Become the change you wish to see in the world. Adapt to the here and now. Adapt to the culture of change.
Absolutely. Oh, yeah. And the I'm just thinking in my mind exactly what you're talking about with Gandhi, and but to speak about Esoteric Agenda, to go back to the very first movie, I found the Esoteric Agenda movie when I found it years ago. I was just getting involved in the whole truther movement that had came up in the mid 2000s or whatever, and I guess Esoteric Agenda was like really embraced by the conspiracy world, for lack of a better term, or alternative media. It's now the political correct term I guess they're using. But also before that, before I was involved in anything like the truth movement or conspiracy or anything like that, I was very involved in esoteric and metaphysical, and actually I'm a doctor of metaphysics, so I was very involved in spirituality. So when I saw Esoteric Agenda, and it had so many aspects of both, and I found that to be such a relief for me as a viewer, because of the fact when I started GIC, that was my goal, was to hopefully bring that whole, well, for lack of a better term, I don't want to say truther or whatever, but corruption awareness aspect of geopolitics, and as well as personal spirituality. And at that time, they were so against each other. It was like they were calling the New Agers, and the other ones were called conspiracy nuts, and you had just brought that. It's like you kind of made a cooperation between the two. And I don't know if that was your intent or if that was just the way that the inspiration came out. And what were you thinking at the time? Were you involved in metaphysics or spirituality and got involved? A lot of people have said that there's a lot of Jordan Maxwell in Esoteric Agenda.
Yes.
What's that? So what was your feeling at the time? Were you trying to balance out the two as well?
Well, to give the best answer to that, at the time, I've always been a very spiritual person, and I've always explained it in a sense that, I believe that religion is the reason why I touch upon religion a lot in Esoteric Agenda and Kymatica is because that was me going through my understanding of religion. Now, I was raised up until the age of maybe, this isn't insulting. I just think it's funny that, what George Carlin said, I was religious until I reached the age of reason. And I think that's perfect, because basically that's exactly what happened. I was raised in up until maybe the age of 9 or 10, very Catholic. And that was when I began understanding that I didn't, inside me, believe any of the stuff that I was doing, any of what I was saying, any of the prayers. I didn't believe any of it. I was doing it out of repetition. And so from there, I took a journey. Obviously I was taking a transitional journey in my life away from that. And my brother handed me the Tao Te Ching. And Eastern philosophy really, really sticks with me because it's filled with parables. If you read the Tao Te Ching by Lao Tzu, it's nothing but parables. And that to me is perfect because it's not there to get you to believe in something. It's there to challenge any belief you may have. And that's where I started moving into the understanding that I absolutely do believe in that unmanifest spiritual ether, that essence, that unlimited potentiality, whether you want to say that it's a religious thing or a scientific thing. I think it's both, personally. And with Esoteric Agenda, what invited me into the metaphysical part of Esoteric Agenda was the fact that that's where I had really came from my entire life, was always looking within for those answers. Now, incorporating all of the agendas, all the political agendas, the economic agendas, the things that were actually going on in the world that I touch base on a lot in Esoteric Agenda, that was something that I wanted to put in context in a way that, yes, there is corruption. There's absolutely corruption everywhere. There's corruption within all walks of life. Everywhere you go on this planet where there is humanity, there is corruption. And the reason why I say that is because and I don't even like using the word corruption because that's a very loaded word, but within humanity is a parable that has not been paid attention to. There's a riddle that we are all dealing with within us that has not been paid attention to. And we now, many of us, the vast majority of the public, believes that we can fix this parable, or we can, fix this problem within us, or answer this riddle within us by changing the world on the outside. Let's occupy Wall Street and let's get Wall Street to just give up. Let's end the Fed. Let's get rid of all this fiat currency. Let's see if we can take down the Rothschild and the Rockefeller dynasty, because then that will give us freedom, right? And I wanted to show that with all of that understanding of what's going on in the world, none of it is going to change if we do not change within. And the easiest thing to do is to take the easy way out and not change within. It's very easy to hop on the bandwagon of change when hundreds of thousands of people are doing it all around the world, and go out and stand there with a picket sign and say that I'm doing my part in changing the world. Well, in a sense, that's taking the path of least resistance, which is what the ego does. The self, the true self within, never sends us down the easy road, because that is never what causes true interchange. And true interchange is really what we're looking for. I don't care personally what the world looks like in 100 years, as long as people within have understood that we change the face of this planet because of who we are on the inside. The planet will reflect what we are on the inside. And that's what I wanted to show in Esoteric Agenda. It doesn't matter how much we have this idea that we want to change something politically or change something economically. That's beautiful, and it's great to recognize those things, but it's great to balance it with the understanding that nothing changes unless we change, because the only thing that actually ever really does change is consciousness, and that's within us. And obviously the earth has its own consciousness. That is not our responsibility to tap into that. The earth will heal itself if we stop getting in its way to heal itself. Everything else, everything beyond humanity will be fine if we stop getting in its way. And so that's the essence of Esoteric Agenda, is really to show us that change only comes from within. It will not happen by changing the outside world. It only comes from within.
And a very, very good point. That my sign actually when I was picketing on Saturday was, "The world is awakening. Now occupy within." And that
awesome.
We're totally on the same wavelength with this, because my whole feeling is the same, that we can change as much as we want on the outside, but all we're going to do is change the paradigm. And if we don't change our consciousness, if we don't start to treat each other better, if we don't start treating ourselves better, we really haven't changed anything. We've just broken the system.
Absolutely. I was just talking with a friend of mine from Los Angeles, actually a part of the Zeitgeist movement out there. Her name is Danette. She runs her own radio show. She has been to the LA one, the Occupy movement out there, and I've been here to the Harrisburg one, and we were basically just talking about it. And there's a few things that don't necessarily seem to add up. Here in Harrisburg, the only place in Harrisburg that is actually, within the city of Harrisburg, which is right where the capital is, obviously, and that's where the people are, the only place there's two places that are putting up signs and flyers that are allowing for flyers to be up there. And one of them is a place called the HMAC, and that's for arts. That's the Harrisburg area arts community goes there. So you would imagine there'd be flyers there. The only other place that has flyers is Dunkin' Donuts, and that's the only national chain. And to me, most people would say that makes absolutely no sense. To me, I think that's a beautiful testament to the fact that we're not fighting against corporations here. We're not fighting against anything. What we're doing is we are now coming into a better understanding of the fact that there's no such thing as corporations. There's a reason why in the film I get into the fact that we are not corporations, because corporations don't exist. They literally do not exist. Everything that we see, there is no such thing as our government. Our government exists within our minds. It exists just like a game of charades does. Now, the game of charades, it doesn't exist. It only exists as long as the people playing the game allow it to, and as long as they believe in it, that's how long it will last. So the thing is let's say you're playing a game of charades, and I'm going to relate this to our current political system. If you're playing a game of charades and you believe it, and let's just say that you're with a group of people, 15 people, and they're all playing charades, and there's one rule that doesn't make sense to any of you, you would imagine that those 15 people would be like, well, this is just a game, let's change that rule.
Yeah.
It's much more difficult when it's solid, stamped down on a piece of paper, because for some reason people look at pieces of paper as gods. They look at them and say, oh, it's down on paper, we can't do anything about it. Logic can't even do anything about it. It's down on paper, we've all agreed upon it, so we have to keep going. In a sense, that's good in a way, because it's the same as in a game. When you come up against a rule that you dislike, it still may serve you, because the thing is without rules, without laws and regulations, there's no learning. All laws within a system are a mirror from a different angle that reflects us, the people, from a different angle. The government is a mirror that reflects who we are from a specific inner psychological standpoint. We have inner government and outer government. The outer government is a reflection of the collective inner government. And it's the same thing with economics. We have inner economics and we have outer economics. The outer economics are a reflection of the collective inner economics. And so the way that I'm bringing this up is, in the game of charades, if there is a rule that makes absolutely no sense, then change it. But understand that it's just a game. Our government, our political system, everything is something that we've agreed upon. We can change it at any moment. But the thing is the reason why it doesn't change in the snap of a finger is because people can't just change out of the blue. It has to develop. When you hear that people have like this aha moment and it changed their lives, it doesn't just happen in an instant. Usually it's been building up and developing and growing for quite some time, until there was a certain point where it could not be recognized as the old me anymore. It has to be the new me. I've changed so much. And that's what I love about this Occupy movement. It's not new. People have been demanding change for years and years and years, if not millennia. And this Occupy movement is a reflection. It's a mirror of the fact that we're finally getting to the point where we don't know exactly what kind of change we want. We don't necessarily know what we want the future to look like. However, we know that we don't want the game that's being played to keep going the way that it's going, because we can see in the here and now, in real time, that it's destroying the place. And we no longer want that. And neither do the corporations. So getting back to Dunkin' Donuts putting up these flyers, it's the same thing in Zuccotti Park in New York. It's owned by Brookfield Properties, which is an $8 billion industry, an $8 billion company. And they were given a $700,000 government handout to rebuild. After 9/11, they were given $700,000 to rebuild Zuccotti Park and, you know, because it's a subsidiary of an $8 billion corporation. Now, that handout was for smaller businesses, which Brookfield Properties is not. However, the one thing I can say on behalf of Brookfield Properties is, from what I've learned, and, you know, I could absolutely be wrong on this, but from what I've learned, they wanted to clean the park. So this past Saturday, at 6 a.m., they were going to evict the park so they could clean it. And the people were like, screw you, not in that manner, obviously.
Right.
Said, hey, wait a minute, we'll clean the park. We'll show you that we can clean the park better than anyone else. So actually, I completely take back that screw you, because I've seen some people actually using that energy. But the biggest energy that I've noticed out of there is actually, you know what, come in. We'll welcome the Capitol Police. We'll welcome New York City Police. And I've actually noticed down here in Harrisburg, the Capital City Police are sitting on the steps with the people talking. Some of them actually brought coffee to the people. Now, this is the exact opposite of what you would imagine. You would see a movie, okay, there's a rally. What's the first thing you see? People being beaten by the police, unfair treatment. Well, you know what? Yes, that's happened a few times, and you would imagine it, you know, to happen because that's what people typically think of these things. But as time moves on, you know, I'm not sure if you've seen that picture of a cop in a squirt gun fight with people up in Canada. You know, there's the rallies going on.
Yeah.
And there was a cop being sprayed by a squirt gun and just taking his bottle of water and squirting back at the person. Now, that to me shows me that everything we once thought might happen with these global, you know, movements, people rallying in the streets for whatever cause it may be, everything that we once thought about it can be false. I'm not saying that it is, but it can be false.
Yeah.
Cops are assholes. I don't believe that.
No.
A lot of people, you know, who, and again, my good friends who are part of, you know, the Occupy movements that are down there every single day, started off with the idea that, you know, cops are assholes, you know, and they don't do anything good for us. Well, guess what? There was about maybe 5 or 10 different cops that I saw, you know, offering coffee to people. Those aren't assholes. Those are human beings that realize, hey, look, these are human beings standing on the Capitol steps, showing what, you know, supposedly this is a democracy, and that's what they're showing. That's what they're showing. Like, this is what democracy looks like. And to me, without using the word democracy or anything along those lines, all I see is human beings starting to level with other human beings. And that's why, you know, the police force seems to be a little bit more lenient. That's why these corporations seem to be a little bit more lenient, because it's so, I don't want to say vague, but there's no real demand yet. Yeah. There's really no idea of what's being demanded. All that is being asked for, and not even really asked for, all that's being allowed right now is for people to gather and say, we want change, because whatever this game is that we're playing right now, it's not serving us anymore. We want something that serves us as humanity, something that will allow us to evolve. Now, the system that we have right now, it's allowing for stagnation. That's all it's allowing for, and that's fine, and that happens every now and then. You would imagine that, you know, when kids get together and they play games, usually they play until it's totally not fun anymore. They don't quit while they're ahead. And that's exactly what most political systems do. They keep going because people attach themselves to it, and they don't want to stop playing that game, because at one point it was serving them on a spiritual level, on a conscious level. When it stops serving you, on a great time scale, it may look like the blink of an eye, but when you're in it, it takes years and years and years, and that's what we're experiencing. We're experiencing a transition phase that right now we are in the, I would say, the climax of the movie, or right before the climax of the movie, I should say, because there's still a lot more change to come.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Wow. On that note, what about your feelings on the whole prophecy thing with 2012, and now that this uprising is happening? I just did a little talk on YouTube on it, and I'm like, well, guys, you wanted 2012, here it is. We're all waking up. What are your feelings on that? Is there a cycle there in any of the research or any of your personal beliefs?
Oh, absolutely. You know, I mean, the Mayans were how should I say it? Mathematical wizards, astronomical wizards. They understood that all math comes from within. All math and all astronomy and all different cycles of time, everything that we experience on a day-to-day basis is something that we experience from within first, and then it projects itself into the world. Now, these cycles that we're experiencing, there are, just like in songs, you'll have maybe a guitar lick that lasts half a measure, and then you'll have a bass lick that lasts 2 full measures, and then the entire verse will be 4 to 6 measures, and then you'll have a chorus has one large cycle of the chorus, which may be 6 measures, but within those measures there's smaller cycles. And it's the same, you know, we have our lunar cycle. Larger than that, we have an annual cycle. Larger than that, we have a yearly cycle. Larger than that, we have a galactic cycle, and so on and so forth. So these cycles obviously are just like what you will find in music. And what happens is all consciousness rides the wave of these cycles. So as our population, and there's no disparity between these two anomalies, the population getting to a critical mass and our consciousness coming to a critical mass. There is no separation between the two. They are reflections of one another. So what we are experiencing now is when moving closer to this end date, which there really isn't an end date. No. It is the song that is nearing the end, and we're feeling it, and we recognize the fact within, whether we can put our finger on it and put a label on it and put an identity on it, we all feel the fact that things are changing, and we're getting to a point where there is no going backwards, there's only going forwards. And that scares people, rightfully so, because, you know, when a child goes through puberty, they're going from childhood to where their parents are taking care of them and everything is taken care of for them, into an adult to where they are able to make their own decisions, you know, and obviously most kids don't move off on their own after puberty. They wait till 18 because that's a cultural standard. Right. But in the wild, any animal that has been able to let go of the adolescence, meaning I don't need my parents to protect me, to keep me in good health, or to feed me anymore, I can do it on my own. Then they move on. They go from a child to an adult. And that is what I believe we as a species are experiencing. We're experiencing, in a sense, the puberty, the transition from adolescence to adulthood as a species, because up till now, it has always been about surviving the elements, surviving the earth, surviving those saber-toothed tigers, making sure we could, you know, come up with enough technology to start a fire so we can stay warm during the winter. We've been surviving the earth. Now that we've survived the earth, and now that the earth is reflecting that something isn't surviving within the earth, now the survival comes from within. Our journey up till now has been surviving the earth. Now it's surviving man. We're surviving ourselves, and the only way to do that is to go within and to know man, to know how we tick within. And there have been ancient sages and seers and gurus and shamans for thousands upon thousands of years saying the most ancient truths that will never go away. The point of it now is not to go backwards and to look at those old words such as God, those old words such as, you know, religion and things along those lines. There's an essence within all of those things that makes sense. It should be put in a modern context now, and that's why I say art. It doesn't, you know, and I've had some people say that, you know, there's no way that you compare this, that, and the other, and the only thing that I say is that is the way that you are choosing to look at it. I choose to look at it differently, and maybe the words aren't true, maybe the words that I'm saying aren't true, but the essence of what I feel is just as true as anything else, because it's allowing for change to continually happen, and that's what I see is happening as we're moving up to this end date, this 2012 end date. If it just so happens to be December 21st that the cycle actually ends or not, none of that really matters to me. What I've noticed is that cultures as far back as you know, recorded history can document, such as the Mayans, understood that the population, the earth, and the consciousness are going to reach a certain point. Some people call it the singularity. But at that point, there is going to be a mass understanding that there is no going backwards. There's no going back into old ideals, no going back into those old beliefs. And whether you want to say it's unfortunate or not, some people have not built up their vessel. And I'm not saying just their physical body, but their emotional body, their psychological body, their conscious body, their etherical body, whatever you want to say. They haven't built themselves or allowed for that vessel to harness the energy of change. So that is what makes it so uncomfortable to change, is because when you are not willing to experience change, then what happens from that point on is change will happen to you, and whether you're able to deal with it or not, it's kind of like taking too much LSD all at once. It may pry open your third eye, but some people's psyche are too fragile to experience so much light, so much energy, so much intelligence all at once. And that only comes from truly within welcoming change. And that's what I believe is happening right now. I'll just talk about 2012, what's going to happen. It's happening. It's been happening for thousands of years. It's like the end of a song. You could say that that's an end of a cycle, but if it's a 5-minute song, at the end of that 5 minutes, that's not the moment that things change. Things have been changing since the beginning of time, and they won't stop changing.
Yeah.
So as long as we understand that change isn't something that will get to a certain point and then we can live in a utopia. It's not like that. There's no finite ending. There's a utopia. It kind of implies that there's some type of finite ending, that we get to this point and then, oh, great, we're here, no more problems, no more discovering the self. We can just sit around, sip Mai Tais, and soak up the sun. That's how it works. Change is always changing. It's the nature of change. And I'll just say one more thing on that. The reason why we teach a man to fish rather than giving a man to fish is because giving a man to fish is showing something finite. Here's your food for the day. You're on your own after this.
Yeah.
But if you teach a man to fish, that is a way or a process that's being opened within the psyche and within the consciousness of that person that says, okay, I've been taught something. Now, I can relate what I've been taught, overcoming the problem of not being able to fish. I can use that same process in that way to overcome any obstacle. And that's what every guru, the reason why gurus are so contradictory in what they say, the reason why gurus are so vague in what they say, is because there really is no answer. What they do is they become a mirror with their words and with their actions. They will mirror everything around the truth to show that the truth is something that really doesn't even exist. It's something that continually evolves and changes, and we just become it. We open ourselves, we relax ourselves, we open our heart to the fact that change is always happening. And that's what my films are about.
All right.
Wow.
Awesome, man. Thank you.
Is this also what your songs are about in the band? I don't suppose you write the songs, do you?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, we all write the songs. All 5 of us. There's no leader within the band. And I'll say it in another way. Yes, I write the lyrics. However, I don't really write the lyrics. Yes, our guitarist writes the guitar, but he doesn't really write the guitar parts. We, like I was saying in the beginning, we tap into the here and now, the song that already exists. You know, there's a song 2 years from now that I haven't written yet. It already exists. It's just a matter, I haven't gotten to the point where I can hear it yet. And so as of right now, yes, you know, all the message that I've basically been explaining is definitely in the band. And that's why the band grows and it evolves and the music changes and it becomes more progressive and it adds influences from Pink Floyd, Tool, Muse, Nine Inch Nails, Linkin Park, Rage Against the Machine, Lady Gaga, you know, Radiohead, Porcupine Tree, some of the most progressive and some of the most poppy, typical music in the world, because that's real. That's what's happening right now. We're tapping into something, and whether I can say we tried to write this song or tried to write that song, the trying was the thing that kept us from being able to write it in the first place. When we actually opened to it, the lyrics came out in 2.5 seconds. You know, as fast as my fingers could type or write on the page, that's how quickly it took. And it's the same with writing everything else. It's just about being able to take a deep breath and listen to the song that's being written. And it's the same with these Occupy movements. It's the same with the film. Last night, I believe I actually, and I'm not going to get into it now because it'll be a long conversation, but I think I actually figured out what the next film is going to be.
Oh, cool. You've been inspired then.
Absolutely, and it happens within a second.
Yeah,
the moment that it arrives in my mind when I relax, when it arrives in my heart when I relax, when it arrives in my body and through my pores, in an instant I know that that's what, you know, that's the next thing that's on the plate. You know, I had no idea where I was going to go from Ungrip. Actually, I'll tell you the truth. I didn't even know whether I even wanted to keep doing films, because I like changing and progressing the way that I put my art out there. But it seems like a film has chosen me, so I'm already on to the next idea.
Great.
Ben, how do you? I'm ashamed to say I don't know how to pronounce the name of the band. How do you say the name of your band?
It's Hierosonic, Hierosonic, all one word. And Hiero, like hieroglyphic, stands for sacred, and sonic stands for vibration or noise. So it actually, in a sense, kind of fits with the term Kymatica.
Yeah, it sure does. Absolutely. Are you guys going to be touring or anything? I recently read that you had to cancel some dates, but are you going to go back on the road, either touring with the band or touring with the movie?
Both. Basically, the band is going to be on tour nonstop for hopefully the next few years. And it'll be on and off, of course. I mean, this past tour, it kind of sucks why it was canceled. It was more for, like, funding issues and promotional issues and things that were out of our control. So it made sense to come home early. However, we will be on the road. Soundline Music Works is it's a label that we teamed up with, and we were very, very careful about teaming up with anybody because, we've been around for about 10 years, and we've realized that there's a lot of people that want to take your money. There's a lot of people that want to give you promises. However, every single one of those individuals that had taken our money, and we've been scammed out of thousands upon thousands of dollars, and the way that I look at it now is the fact that I paid them thousands of dollars to teach me a lesson that now I understand. Because, you can't really blame, you can't really point the finger anywhere, and in a sense there is no blame at all. It's a lesson, and it took us a lot of money and a lot of hard work to get to the point where we understand now that it's our future, so we are the ones who are going to make it that way. And as soon as we did that, then the perfect partners, I guess I would say, I can't even say business partners because they're artistic partners. Right. They know the business. They also know the new music industry, so they know, and their name is Soundline Music Works. They absolutely understand what the message of the band is. They absolutely understand what the message, to their understanding, what the message of the films are. So they're very, very comfortable with allowing us to do things our way and the way we want. So it's actually great. We get to tour when it makes sense. We get to, we just made a music video. We have an album for sale. We get to do all these things when we believe that it is time for people to hear something or to see something. Mm-hmm. And that really allows for a lot of creative flexibility with us. And so we're going to be touring a lot with the band. However, in a sense, there's no separation between the band and the videos. There's the fact that one is music and one is film, but the message is the same. It's kind of like saying something in two different ways. Mm-hmm. And, I think it's beautiful that we're actually going to be touring with the band, and in between some of those dates, I'll be doing screenings.
There you go.
And that's anywhere around the country. And what we're actually doing is we're allowing for people to contact us and to tell us where they would like to see us, because instead of just, the old music industry is all about just booking shows and promoting the hell out of it and hoping people come to those areas. Well, the thing is now we have Facebook, now we have the Internet, where we can ask people first, where would you like to see us? What would you like to have happen in your hometown, and maybe we could facilitate that.
And the UK.
Well, I'll tell you what, I'll be out there in May with a very, very beautiful friend of mine, Anais Amar. She teaches intuitive dance, and we actually started this thing called Deep in Your Art. And what we're going to be doing is actually traveling through the UK into Israel. And actually, I don't know how much of this I should even really be saying because it's not really confirmed yet. But long story short, I will actually be out there this coming May. So anybody out there, definitely please keep checking the Facebook page, because I'll be out in that area in May and June with the band and with my friend Anais.
Brilliant.
Awesome. And your Facebook page is it's called Hierosonic?
Well, there's Hierosonic, and that's the band page. And yeah, I mean, so you can find Hierosonic on Facebook.
And Ungrip, I already found Ungrip on there. That's cool.
Yeah, and all the films have their own page, and then there's a Talismanic Idols page, there's a Hanged Man Project page, and then there's also my personal page, which, to be perfectly honest, most people just add my personal page so they can talk to me, and I'm perfectly fine with that. It's just Ben Stewart, so if you look up Ben Stewart on Facebook and want to contact